I had shared that my intention was I wanted to walk with God. Now, I'll be honest, why I shared that intention in the group dynamic was because what I was hoping they would hear is that I'm probably not going to talk to any of you. I'm just going to kind of be to myself and I'm going to walk with God. And what ended up happening is that I found that I did not want to remove myself from any conversations that were presented on my path. I wanted to listen more than I talked. I wanted to really listen from my whole heart. I wanted people to feel heard. I wanted them to know that they were seen and known and valued. And it just felt so beautiful. What kind of blew me away was I had shared with them, my intention was that I wanted to walk with God. And I did in every conversation that I had with each and every one of you. I walked with God. And it was so profound. It was so potent. It was so beautiful. Well, hey there, and welcome back to the Fire and Soul Podcast, the space to deepen into your divine alignment, your divine destiny, and further activate your inner awakening. And I'm just so grateful that you are here. This is going to be a short one. It's called Little Bits of Lately because it's been a minute since I have hopped on and offered a solo. And quite frankly, it's been a minute since I've even been able to release in regular pacing. It was a very, very full beginning of 2024, the fullest I think I have felt in years. And I'm celebrating that it was our highest grossing revenue Q1 of all time and more than doubled, almost tripled in revenue just in those first 3 months of this year, what we did all of last year. So the work is beginning to pay off. And while I will never put myself at that maximum capacity again, schedule wise, with that many launches back to back to back, I'm also celebrating the expansion because the real revenue expansion has come from finally stepping into knowing my worth. And that's as a result of these last few years, doing such deep shadow work and moving more into what's calling me forward and having the courage to answer those calls. At the very beginning of this year, just to kind of backtrack, I offered up a solo and I was on my way to the airport to go and be a guest speaker for the Transformation Leadership Council. I think that's the last solo that I offered. I could be wrong, but I think that's it. And I was talking about how it's time to be bold and to make big brave moves and to really go for it, right? And to hone the courage, which is really just taking the action, irrespective of how we feel, just going for it. Of that which is, yes, calling us forward, because if it's calling, it'll keep calling. So it's on us to figure out what to do with the fact that it's calling us and how do we cultivate more courage to answer that call. And so part of what I'm experiencing in terms of these beautiful blessings and all the abundance is me answering the call, not even knowing how it's all going to work out, not even necessarily knowing where it all goes. In fact, almost always not, but just trusting in that when I ask for help, because I am in the middle of a snag or I'm feeling stuck or I'm in a loop or in the trap yet again, right? And I'm like, all right, shadow frequency, I see you. I acknowledge you. What is trying to emerge in my life right now? Well, also in early January. And I believe I had already returned from New Orleans, which is where we were meeting as a group for the Transformation Leadership Council. And by the way, quick little update on that. And I haven't shared this anywhere but here. So you may be the first that I'm sharing it with outside of like my mom and my dad and a few close friends. I have been officially invited to be a member of TLC. And so for that, I'm deeply honored. And I am saying yes, because it still does align. And I'm excited to see what unfolds from that experience. It just felt very comfortable. I felt very at home. And so we'll just see what happens. We're going to meet officially as a member. I get to in July in Vail, Colorado. So I will keep you posted. But anyway, I remember coming home from that experience, and I was in some sort of a loop, right? I was just feeling really snagged by some shadow frequency around relational dynamics. And I had been doing such deep inner work since last year, well, many years, but especially when y'all know I gave up those cigarettes finally and for once and for all. on June 15th of last summer. And then I went through the grand experience of reconciling every adolescent feeling and unmet need and all of that, just bodies changing, not knowing where you belong, all of that. So that informed my capacity for relational dynamics, right? Because wherever there's any sort of inner child work, trauma work, whatever, that we would then cope with some sort of soothing mechanism and escapism like alcohol or cigarettes or drugs or pills or all the things that people do. There's also simultaneously something to be said for the nervous system is usually operating from that same paradigm, that same season and or chapter of life. So even though I was on this path for 6 months of doing the deep, deep, deep inner work, I had not yet fully learned to regulate my nervous system. So all the same sort of turbulence and discomfort and conflict was happening for me inside. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I have the best relationship I've ever had with my dad, with my mother. There's been so much forgiveness. There's been so much healing. Some of the power dynamics with certain women in my life that had, for the most part, been smoothed out if it was meant to. And I had taken so much accountability for every area that I was aware of. And it was like, I'm still feeling this. I'm so self-aware. I teach it. I have a top 1% podcast on this stuff. I need help. So I literally found myself on my knees at my altar asking for help. And that's a really beautiful place to be. But then, of course, if we ask for help and it's sincere and we truly mean it and it's with reverence and gratitude and awe, there's a very high probability that you will be delivered the help through a guide, a resource, something along your path. But it's up to us to notice it, right? To be aware of that nudge, of that prompt. And so it was maybe about, I don't know, I don't really know exact timeline, but maybe about 10 days later, maybe it was 5 days later, I saw an invitation through some marketing for this workshop called Breathe with Cannabis. What? Cannabis? Breathing? How in the world does that even go? And I'm not a cannabis user in a regular way by any means. And because I don't smoke cigarettes, I really didn't want to smoke anything. But nevertheless, the person that was putting this on as the main person that I saw marketing this Breathe with Cannabis workshop, that was 3 people doing like each of their parts to really pull off a magical workshop for us. It was this guy named Aaron Apke, who, by the way, is coming on the Fire and Soul podcast, and he's been at the top of my dream guest list for almost a year now. I've been studying under him like crazy, all things Law of One, spiritual intelligence, Kundalini awakening, the Great Awakening, the rabbit hole. I mean, all of it, right? Conscious wealth creation. He's just an incredible soul. Aaron Apke, if you don't follow him, Aaron, B as in boy, Ke. He's all over the YouTube. He's got a massive following, and you will glean so much value from his free content. Anyway, Aaron Apke was putting out this Breathe with Cannabis workshop, and I was like, that just seems so odd. Like, I don't know. I had some initial judgments on it. And at the same time, I felt deeply that this was an answer to my prayer. And I didn't know how, I didn't know why. I was just like, this was a full yes. And I didn't have any reasoning behind it, right? The mind was like, why are you signing up for this and not even really looking at the details? Are you just doing it? It was a full yes. I did recognize it as an answer to my prayer of I need help. I didn't know how that was going to help. But now I know, right? So I took the step. I answered the call. I took the action. Most important part. Well, not the most important part. The integration of the information and the awareness is the most important part for the full embodiment. But this was the next most important step. And so I go to this Breathe with Cannabis workshop, which was about 10 days away from that point. So it must have been early February when I saw that. I couldn't wait. It was going to be February 15th. I will never forget that date, because I did this workshop called Breathe with Cannabis that was basically 3 hours long, and it was content, and it was all about relationships. Oh, hello, now I remember, because they do a different topic every month. It's a different theme. And like last month, it was purpose. And so this was about relationships. And I was like, this is it. That's it. So, okay, I didn't really expect it to come through like the Breathe with Cannabis workshop. And I don't know who these other 2 people are, but this is it. And so I get to the workshop. Aaron Apke is teaching the content around relational dynamics and where are we in or out of alignment. And in all relationships, with self, with source, with all sentient beings, with food, with nature, with work, with our children, with our pets, like all of it, right? And so that process was to go through the questions and answer before you've taken any cannabis. And then the next part was like this whole beautiful coaching around conscious cannabis usage. So it's not like the old days of or people who use it recklessly or they overindulge, let's just say, right? A full on escapism. This is not it. This is just like just to open the heart, get out of the head, drop into the body, soothe and regulate the nervous system. And partake in that for a little while. There was some music playing. I don't know, there was probably 50 people on this call. And then the third part is the part that blew me away. The third part was this guy named Christopher August, who was recently on this show. And he came on and he was sharing this whole breathwork portion. And then that's how I got introduced to his breathwork app, Beats and Breath. And I know that I've shared about that here a few times. Anyway, the breathwork through the questions and the cannabis, I mean, I maybe took 2, possibly 3 little hits. It hurt my throat, it hurt my lungs, but I was just gonna just try it on. And I ended up, because the breath work really anchored in so much for me, I ended up journeying for another 2 hours past the 3-hour workshop. And it was profound. I broke through yet another layer of deep fear around, do I really get a future? Do we get a future? I didn't even know just how deeply embedded some of those fears were. And I'm actually going to share a little story that happened about a month later that was really amplifying for me, with just no mistake whatsoever of like, yes, this is still really deep. And until you fully look at this, you're not going to be free, right? Anyway, stay with the Breathe with Cannabis workshop. It was so amazing. My body started to tense and to shake, and I was like, the only way that I can describe it is that I was freezing cold, and I was going to go through like a pretty big breakthrough. Like I was having some somatic response, and I definitely kept breathing. I didn't back off. And I mean, I backed off a little, but I didn't stop breathing. And if that happens for you, if you get some tetany, I think is the hands when they clamp up at the feet, or you feel really scared, just back off a little, but don't give up, because the breath work is your connection to all of life. It is our channel to the divine, to life force, right? I mean, it's so powerful. The breath of life. So, so good. And will open up so much for you in your awareness. But nevertheless, Jesus came. Jesus has definitely been my main master teacher and guide ever since last summer, when I clearly got the message. Right, you may remember this, I was on my way to the river trip, and I was seeing all these signs and bumper stickers of like all around Jesus this, Jesus that, and it was like, what is happening? Why is this continuing to show up right now? And it's so intense. It's like everywhere. And then right about that same time, I put on Resurrecting Jesus, which is a book that was written and narrated by the Zen Buddhist teacher Adyashanti. He is an expert on all things genuine awakening, and I love his mystical interpretation of the first 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Jesus' time on planet Earth. And anyway, so all that was going on, and that's when I really cultivated this awareness that like Jesus is my main guide, you know? And for those of you who have graduated beyond the religious stuff, and all of that's important, and it has the perfect place at a certain point on our journeys. But some of us, many of us, are evolving past that at this point, if it's in the highest and best for our journey. And I knew that it was for me, and I knew that I could rely on the wisdom, and I was learning to discern what was coming through. And it's just such a steady, beautiful anchor for me that shows up every single day and has since last summer. So in the middle of a really, really intense breakthrough in this breathwork experience, Jesus appeared in my vision. And the first the message was, you are here on a mission. You have nothing to fear. Now, I imagine that would be a very important statement for anyone, right? But it was really critical for me to hear it in that way from this beautiful teacher and master guide for me. And so that definitely helped me relax into ways that um, I didn't even know that I needed. And it was so beautiful. And then that's what allowed me to become aware of the Beats and Breath app. And so at this point, I don't even know how many journeys I've done, maybe like 130 journeys, different sessions and meditations and breath work. And I have turned on so many people to that app, and it's been changing my life. And you can do a whole trial. There's a whole bunch of free content on there. So Beats and Breath, whether it's Android or Apple, is incredible. And the co-founder of that app is Christopher August. And we talked about this briefly when he was on my show, but that's what led me to the Gene Keys. And I know I've shared about this here, but it's worth repeating because the Gene Keys, now it's been almost 3 months, again, on my knees, late January, asking God for help. I need help. I don't know how to pull myself out of this like the turbulence and the shadow frequency um, around relational dynamics. So the breath work was a beautiful place for me to first see what was actually so dense that I couldn't even get access to the deeper parts that wanted to come through and wanted to emerge, because all that fear of apocalyptic thoughts, right, was still there that I wasn't even fully present to. It's really wild when we really think about this. And so because of that big breathwork session and then all my subsequent sessions, I was now beginning to get a little bit more access to the truth of what was happening in my being and why I'm really here and why these shadow frequencies are, in fact, the greatest gift of my life in this incarnation. And that only happened by me becoming aware of the gene keys and the first 4 main prime gene keys, because that's where I started. I heard Richard Rudd, the founder, and Christopher August say, just work with the first 4 main ones for like the first 4 months, and then work on the Venus sequence, which is the next set of gene keys, for about 4 months, and then move into the Pearl sequence, which is all around prosperity and all of that. And then after you've done that for a full year, then maybe think about teaching it or getting certified. And so that's my trajectory that I'm on right now. Just began to open up the Venus sequence. I didn't even look at those numbers. I didn't even want to know. I just wanted to fully embrace and integrate everything that I was learning from the first 4 main gene keys. And so anyway, if you guys are interested, Christopher August did an IG, an Instagram live gene keys reading of my profile, which will give you some awareness of how to maybe download your profile and start to understand what you're looking at. And you can do that at genekeys.com. And it's completely free. And there's so many resources online. And I would highly encourage you to seriously consider getting involved in that, because it's life-changing. It is truly your soul map based on the exact moment, time, and location of where you were born and when you emerged on this planet. There's just no mistake in any of it. It's all so perfect and divine and cosmic, and that I'm fully aware of now. So when I started to really look at the shadow frequencies of those 4 main prime gene keys, I was like, oh my gosh, this makes perfect sense. And so then I got to work with the shadow frequencies and the gifts and the siddhi, SIDDHI, which is the attainment, the purpose, the fulfillment of your life, if you really honor what the shadow has for us, these beautiful gifts that reside within the shadow, the master teacher shadow. And so I got to take that contemplation, those pauses, into all the work that I do, including deep listening everywhere I am, and especially around a couple of key areas that I want to share with you. So, number one, getting to weave all of this into the way that I held my most recent retreat, the Soul Essence retreat in Ojai. It was, it just, it changed me. It opened me. It shifted me completely. And there's a different frequency that I know I opened myself up to. I began to attune to, and I didn't know that all of those blessings, that magic, the miracles were awaiting me when all I had to do was just go deeply into the shadow, really face it soberly, consciously, thoroughly, earnestly, genuinely, authentically, right? There's just no other way around it. You can't fake your way through this. And so worth it when we're willing, when we're willing. That's all I'll say. But anyway, one of the other areas that I really gleaned some awareness just of how deep that fear was, but by this contemplation of the gene keys, I was in a plant medicine journey in March. So this would have been about a month after I did the breath work, the breathe with cannabis session, right? With Ryan, Christopher, and Aaron, and 50 other beautiful souls from around the world. And I definitely felt called to go and sit with it's flower medicine. It's a little bit psilocybin, a little bit of ayahuasca. It's a really gentle, soft experience. I don't think I'll ever do the just straight up aya. For me, that just it feels too harsh on my body. It feels too dark and honestly a bit violent for me. Wouldn't change that I've done it, but I don't believe I'll be doing it again this life. Nevertheless, I have massive reverence for so many different modalities in the sacred plant medicine space. But these are people that I had journeyed with back in November. So just to kind of set the stage, November, I was in the heart of reconciling every adolescent thought when I picked up the cigarettes, right? And just was trying to escape out of that, numb out of that. And so that was all still there. And so was the nervous system that corresponded to that. And so it was in November when I went and journeyed with this couple that like to remain private. And it was in that journey where I literally just said, my intention is that I wanted to walk into the field of divine mother's love. I didn't want any big journey. I just needed just to actually reconnect to my heart and that real sense of feeling safe in my body, safe in the world, safe to dream, to hope, to live, deeply. And that's what I got. It was so beautiful. I sat next to a roaring fireplace. And I did have a wonderful conversation with someone that I met that night named Dan. And we just totally connected and we were vibing and it was so beautiful in that journey space. But the real gift of that evening is that I sat in front of that fire and tears were just kind of streaming down my face as I wept in gratitude to feel so loved, so supported, so guided. And I knew that I wasn't alone. Like I knew it in a way that I hadn't ever known it before. And that was so healing for me. It was so beautiful. Now, still, the relational dynamics that I had not yet really looked at because I hadn't come across the gene keys, right? So here it is. We're now in late January. Life is feeling amazing and very abundant, and I'm blessed. And there's collaborations and business coming to me. And I've just sold out my most high end offer of all time in the most ease, by the way. So I was just celebrating so many blessings, and my relationships were struggling. And I was really struggling with what I was saying to myself about myself. So my inner talk was very acute. And we're watching that happen, right? The acceleration, the quickening, the intensifying of the macro and the controllers and all the crumbling and the reckoning that we're seeing, it's also happening for us on the micro. And so wherever our work is really, really up, and it's usually in the space of shadow frequency and addiction and numbing out and escapism, it is so up for us in really acute ways where it feels like a freaking roller coaster, right? This avalanche, this overwhelm, this tsunami of whatever that favorite flavor of suffering has been your whole life. It's been on steroids lately. And the only answer is to go right into it. That's shamanism 101, to face the beast of the belly, your own fears. And then if you get involved with the gene keys, you realize I chose that shadow. I chose that shadow, and that shadow too. I wanted to refine in the journey of my soul in this incarnation with all that playing out in the macro. This is what I wanted to do. What? It really actually helped me grow in ways in my spiritual and emotional maturity that I can't even explain, but I think you probably got the gist, right? So all of that was going on. And And so getting plugged back into my heart was important, but it still didn't really take care of some of the other stuff that I needed help. I didn't have access to the tools of how do I get myself unhooked from some of these dynamics that have been plaguing me my entire life. Well, of course, that's why I was on the planet, is to move through the shadow to get to the gift and to the cities, right? And so anyway, in the March sitting in this plant medicine journey space, um, that whole journey was so cool. I had shared with the group that I was here for the second time, so I was feeling much more comfortable and confident about my experience, and what we were about to embark on. And I had shared that my intention was I wanted to walk with God. Now, I'll be honest, why I shared that intention in the group dynamic was because what I was hoping they would hear is that I'm probably not going to talk to any of you. I'm just going to kind of be to myself and I'm going to walk with God. And what ended up happening is that I found that I did not want to remove myself from any conversations that were presented on my path. I wanted to listen more than I talked. I wanted to really listen from my whole heart. I wanted people to feel heard. I wanted them to know that they were seen and known and valued. And it just felt so beautiful. Meanwhile, I still have my own stuff going on, and I'm fully aware that it's like tears would just stream down my face. And it was just like, fear, sadness, grief, fear, sadness, grief for all that we are seeing play out that I used to have those feelings about. Now I'm celebrating because there's just no denying in my world that the Great Awakening is real, it's unstoppable, and there's nothing the controllers can do to stop it, right? No matter what psyop they play out, we're here for it. We'll move on, we will grow, and we will evolve, and we will definitely prevail. The new earth is here and it's happening, and it's just so exciting. But back then in March, there was just still some, and maybe there still will be, and I'll be surprised. I don't know. I'm going to go journey actually in just a couple of days in Austin, Texas, with some close friends with the same facilitators. That's where they're based. And so I will listen the way that I always have. But this last little piece in this March sit was so beautiful, because when it finally came time to share in the integration circle the next morning, what kind of blew me away was I had shared with them, my intention is that I wanted to walk with God. And I did. In every conversation that I had with each and every one of you, I walked with God. And it was so profound. It was so potent. It was so beautiful. And another thing that I want to share about that journey, just to feel like we got to the root of some deep fear. But again, there may still be more. And if there is, we'll continue to shed. But at one point, maybe 3/4 of the way through the night, I was called to walk outside. And so I got up, I walked to the front door. It's a beautiful enclosed property in the Hollywood Hills on a pretty beautiful piece of land with a lot of trees and plants and flowers and gorgeous landscaping. And it was very alive, very vibrant. This was also March, keep in mind. So spring was just beginning to happen. And the moment that I walked outside, I was barefoot. I'll never forget it. There was these really two tall trees, really, really tall. I mean, in my world, maybe 20 feet high. And they were right there as I walked out the front door. And all of a sudden, the tops of both of these trees side by side, or standing side by side, they started to turn into the scariest monsters that you could possibly imagine. Like whatever your worst fears are and how demonic and dark that might be, like that's what these tree tops turned into. And they were kind of like all gnashed and smoldering, and it was pretty wild. But because I had done so much work, I believe, and this medicine was really here to assist me, all I did was just kind of look at these trees, just trying to scare me, and I was just kind of looking, and they were super high, and I was just kind of, I wouldn't say giving it my attention. It was just kind of just noticing. It was neutral. The observation didn't have a negative. It didn't have a positive. I was just kind of watching it, kind of like how a camcorder would pick up content. I don't think the camcorder has an opinion on what it's picking up. It's just neutral observation. That's the best way that I know how to describe like what I was observing in these two trees that were working really, really, really hard to shape shift into something super scary and terrifying to maybe force me to go back inside or what. But instead, I just stood there and I just looked at it. And then they got bigger. And then in my, remember, I'm on a little bit of plant medicine. So they, in my experience, they lunged toward me, try to scare me even more. You know what I mean? And I just stood there and I was just looking at it, feet firmly rooted on the earth. And when they realized that they could not scare me or faze me, I literally watched them just bow their head and what felt like returns the light. Everything is seeking resolution with the divine. There's just a forgetting of who we really are in the interim. This is just my wholehearted belief, right? Which is why I don't cast any negativity on anything or anyone at all. If we're really in the oneness conversation, the oneness frequency, the unity timeline, then whatever I say or think about anyone is what I say and think about myself. So they return to the light. The moment that happened, I'm telling you, the entire backyard turned into like a very vibrant, vocal, celebratory fairyland. Music, it was like, yes, yes, this is how you do it. Go, girl. The flowers were singing. There was like, it was a full on procession. And I really believe with every fiber of my being that that is the way that it really is. I mean, why wouldn't it be? If everything is interconnected, we're talking about the unity timeline, right? Then the more that I do not allow the fear to take me over, to run my life, to cause me any more anxiety and pain, or to feel stuck and small, or anything that resembles being trapped, the more that I just like, nah, you ain't got any power over me, right? And it's so clear. It doesn't have to be a big old deal. There's no drama. It was just like, huh, just look at it, right? Neutral observation. The entire backyard lit up. There was music happening. Meanwhile, I am on the medicine, but like it really showed me as an anchor point to not give that shit any of my attention at all. And second of all, just how completely supported and guided we are at all times. So that felt really, really important to share. And I'm telling you, ever since then, so now let's see, I'm recording this on May 7th. That was basically middle of March. It's been almost 2 months. And I would say that by like 95% of my experience, that fear is gone. It feels so, so, so good. The relational dynamics are being so healed. It's so beautiful to the point that my mother and my sister, and what better validation, have said, the work that you are doing is healing our family. And I believe, because I've been given messages by grandparents who've since passed, that it's the work that we do when we do it in this way with just such devotion, such authenticity, such reverence, it's going to heal the ancestral lines. And they may not be aware of that, but it doesn't even matter because it doesn't take away from the fact that it's true, right? And that this is real. And this just makes the experience of being human so much more worthwhile. It's so not about just my own little tiny myopic life. It's how does this impact the greater good? Is this impact my ancestral lineage? How does this impact the next incarnation that I might have, and maybe even on planet Earth? I used to say, I don't want to come back. I don't want to come back. I'm done. But now I'm like, listen, if it's in the highest and best for the contract of my soul, so be it. If it's in the highest and best for the greatest good for all of humanity, so be it. I'm here for it. I'm made for it. And in fact, I know I chose it. And maybe you feel that same way about your own experience right now. And if that's the case, then I honor and I celebrate you, because we are walking this path in this way together. And the more of us that can become aware of what we focus on, that is obviously going to grow in our attention, right? What is the phrase? It's like, where focus goes, energy flows. And that's just such a true statement. And it's said by a lot of different people in a lot of different ways, but just focusing on that fear. So what did I do? I got rid of all the Telegram channels, all the YouTube channels, anything that would have me feeling anything less than that magical fairyland vibe that night on the plant medicine. I'm not interested. I'm not willing to give it my time. Now, there are some things that I listen to and that I still watch that feel very informative, but in a positive, empowering way, as one example. And I'm going to share this with you here. It was the last little bits of two things that I wanted to share. And this was the one thing that I had written down as a little bullet point was like, talk about the Great Awakening. It's really real. It's really happening. There's no turning back. And I know I touched on it a moment ago, but there are a couple of guys, and I cannot believe this hasn't gotten like hundreds of thousands of subscribers yet, but no doubt, you mark my words, it will. But Aaron Apke, again, my favorite teacher right now, and Jeremy Griff, who teaches all around conscious wealth creation, exiting the system, getting into privatized trust, decentralized cryptos, bitcoins, etc. This is what he's been teaching for 10 years. He is doesn't need to work another day in his life. He's probably mid-30s. He's got a beautiful movement teaching this. Well, anyway, they release one episode, a big mammoth podcast every month. Starting this year is when they began. It's called the Great Awakening Podcast, and then they'll kind of break it down into shorter clips. But it's usually like 2.5, maybe 3 hours. And it's what is the positive news? Where's the evidence that the Great Awakening really is happening, and all the other things that we would never see in mainstream media, legacy media, right? That is so clear that there is no turning back from this beautiful shift in the evolution of human consciousness, that the Great Awakening is real. Each one of us, one at a time, doing our work, facing off with the fears, the shadows, no longer choosing the route of escapism and numbing. I mean, I can't even tell you, I don't even know if I know anyone who's really close to my life that drinks any alcohol. Like, this doesn't even exist in my reality, right? Like drugs, no way. Sacred plant medicine, totally different. And for those of you who've ever embarked on that journey in an impeccable setting, know that there's just no comparing, right? And so that is so beautiful. But listening to this podcast, and getting so present to just so many opportunities that are before us, including, yes, this big, beautiful bull run with investing in decentralized crypto and Bitcoin. Do yourself a favor and go and take a look at the Great Awakening podcast. I'm sharing it here. It's been a while since I've shared resources like that, not because I don't think it's true. Actually, the opposite. It's that there was a part of me for the longest time that just thought, there's so many people out there sharing that kind of information. I don't need to be another one of them. But the reality is that we are here now and it is go time. And I feel like there's more and more of us that are getting more confident about wanting to share, because the more the more of us that know about this and that are getting ourselves free from the matrix, the more empowered that we're going to be, and the more that we can get after what we came here to do, which is to create this whole new paradigm of the unity timeline. We are all working together collaboratively, and it's just such a beautiful experience. And this is the magic that is awaiting all of us in ways that you can't even imagine how blessed you will be in the realm of true wealth and abundance when you begin to tap into these frequencies and start to, educate yourself, inform yourself, and do your research. And it's very, very, very empowering. And millions of us around the world are embarking on this journey. And I'm just incredibly grateful to be a part of that consciousness, right? And that I'm doing enough of the deep inner work so that I can actually be even aware of what is calling me forward. And when I ask for help and I see the nudges, I can actually discern that is help through a teacher, a guide, a resource, a podcast, or whatever, and then take the time to investigate and to discern, is that for me, and is that for me now? Yes, it is. Why, no, it's not, right? And so know the whys and then to move forward. So this has been serving my journey really, really well, including, this is the last little piece that I'll share with you, and then I'll let you go with my little bits of lately. And it's that I think I touched on this earlier, and it's around all this work with the gene keys and the breath work and facing the shadows and the sacred plant medicine, and being so busy, but not allowing for my rituals and my practices to be compromised. That stayed in place for sure, more so than ever, in fact, which I'm really proud of. And I want to honor myself on, because if I don't, who will? But also it's a frequency thing. People can feel it. And so coming into this retreat, thanks to my dear friend Anastasia, who is also, she's a medicine. I don't know if she calls herself a medicine woman. I don't, but we are now running medicine woman retreats. My most recent retreat in Ojai We had plant medicine 3 nights and a really, really big journey from my same facilitators that was just so beautiful that I was able to secure and bring them up onto retreat. And it was transformational. But my friend Anastasia, before I move off of that too quickly, she was incredibly supportive and helpful for me when I reached out to her a few weeks before my retreat, this last one, because I've done 4 in less than 2 years' time. And I just said, would you like to swap ideas? Turns out she had a lot more to offer me than I did her, at least in that moment. There's other ways in which I will support her and have and will continue to do. Um, but it was her timeline. It was 2 things that really stood out. She had this timeline that she had really poured her heart into, and it was so detailed that like literally a 3-minute ritual or like embodiment practice or somatic, ritual was also like the song that she wanted to play during that time. Now, this may seem obvious to some of you, but I don't really plan a whole lot in my past of those kinds of experiences. They've always worked out. I just trust what wants to come through. But this helped me take my retreat facilitation to a complete next level. Because everyone felt it. All of my guests felt the devotion that went into the planning of this retreat. And the other piece that she offered, sorry, there's like a lash that's like a little stuck here. Let me let it free. The other part that I hadn't ever considered, much less heard anyone say, that blew me away. But let me give a little bit of context. A photographer that I had worked with on a couple of my retreats and a lot of my own branding photography, she's amazing. And I love her as a person, as a friend, and as talent for sure. She was supposed to be the photographer for this retreat. And about 6 weeks prior, she broke her foot and she could not join us on retreat. And I felt pretty devastated for like a couple of days there, even though I know everything happens for us, never to us, divine order at all times and in all ways. But at the same time, I was kind of sad, and what would I do without her? Anyway, started putting the plan Bs into action and it all worked out. But then about maybe 2 weeks before my retreat, I'm in this Zoom that I had requested with my friend Anastasia, who also runs the Medicine Woman retreats, who, by the way, is a world-renowned wedding photographer. We're talking used to travel all around the world for like fancy schmancy weddings. And she's got a lot of high-profile clients in the self-development space, like Danielle Laporte and Gabor Mate and you name it, right? And so, but she, like many of us, has had a profound awakening over these past few years. And so she's being really called into the retreat space and she's so good at it. And anyway, she was sharing with me a couple of these rituals and these altar creations. And I said, oh, wait, I don't understand what that means. Like, do you have a photo somewhere? So she's like, yeah, I'll send them to your phone. So she was texting me maybe like 8, 9, 10 photos while we were on the Zoom. And I was like, Anastasia, why don't you use these photos to promote your retreat? Because I knew that she had, I think at that point, 2 more seats to sell. She completely sold out eventually. But I said, why aren't you showing these photos? She was like, what? No, that is way too sacred. I would never, I think these were her words, exploit such private moments to market for a future retreat experience. No way. And of course, that sounds so obvious when we hear it with the benefit of hindsight. But in that moment, all I knew was you have a photographer there, you capture those moments, and you utilize that for your marketing for future events. Why would you not? But when she said it the way that she said it, it changed me. And it changed me on retreat. And then I realized why my friend, who had been my retreat photographer in the past, was not supposed to join us, because it wouldn't have worked. I will never actually have a photographer capture the entire retreat. There's a whole bunch of reasons why, but top level or high level is number one. When there's a camera there or a video camera there, you might be performative and it be unconscious. You're aware of how you look, how you sound, what you're wearing, right? What's happening in the room. And without that camera there, I was just in the present moment and fully dropped in to what the moment called for and not thinking about what it needed based on future marketing material. Complete and utter game changer. Also, I sent over my retreat timeline because she let me utilize hers and then create my own from that template. And I had two different timelines, one for the guest, which doesn't have any of the details, just kind of gives the agenda, the itinerary with timing, et cetera, right? And then the massage therapist, the medicine people, the photographer that I did hire, who was actually my first photographer at our very first retreat back in Ojai 2 years ago. She's local to Ojai. And it was so amazing. This is how fast we can grow and evolve. I sent her over the timeline and she said, "Oh, good. I'm glad that you sent me this because I wanted to check in with you. I only want to capture the most benign parts of the retreat. Anything that's really holy or really sacred or really private, I don't want to be there for those, obviously." And I was like, yeah, obviously, which was only obvious from like 2 days prior. Do you know what I mean? It was so incredible to watch how that level of consciousness lined up the moment that I got it. So thank you to my dear friend Anastasia, who brought that to my awareness. It was incredible, and who showed me how to really pour in with every detail on retreat planning that really was a game changer in so many ways. And of course, we had very different kinds of retreats, but mine shifted dramatically as a result of having that Zoom with her and not having a photographer there capturing my every moment and or the guests. Everyone could relax. We went from a state of doing into a beautiful state of being, and it was healing. And so that experience, the best way that I know how to describe it, which is in alignment with my gene keys and the whole purpose of my shadows into the gifts, into the city, the attainment, the purpose, the fulfillment of my life's work, is for me to move out of being like the center of the attention. And it's almost like the beautiful divine mother's support to let everyone around me fully shine. I have never felt more fulfilled than I experienced on retreat ever in the history of my life's work. And this is my life's work, what I'm doing. I was meant to hold sacred space, but I would have never known what was possible for me had those shifts not happened. If a photographer was there the whole time, it wouldn't have been the same. If I didn't have the details of all parts of that retreat, if I wasn't willing to be courageous enough to try on sacred plant medicine and to bring facilitators into the space and make it a real medicine woman experience where every single one of our 15 guests expressed profound breakthroughs. There are a few that feel like they are truly sustained and lives have changed. Friendships have forged. It is real, it is magical, and it happens when we hold and honor sacred space in the ways that I believe we are being called into. And for me, it feels quieter. It's a deep honoring, it's a deeper listening. And it doesn't mean that there won't be incredible success and expansion and abundance and blessings and all of that, right? It'll be on steroids, and I know it. What I mean by steroids, like there's so much more of that, but it's not me saying, look at me, look how fabulous I am, and let me exploit these really tender, sacred moments. In fact, I got the retreat photos back. I said, I don't want you to edit anything. I want it to be raw. I want it to be natural. And I look at it and I was like, they're perfect. My old self would have never thought that. It would have been like, what's going to get the most amount of attention? What's going to really grab people? And I was like, show the most benign, general parts. It will encapsulate the vibe because the vibe cannot be denied. I'm not pitching my next retreat. In fact, most of it's sold out anyway, but I will be sharing that as I gain more clarity about where it's going to be. It's either going to be in Malibu or a little magical mountain town in Mexico, or possibly outside of Austin. So those are the three locations in the fall. I'll keep you posted if seats are still available. In the meantime, I'm about to embark on a trip to Austin to see if I will live there, because another piece in my journey in May was go to Austin. My heart leapt out like a little vision, like a plane, like, you know, when we see a plane take a flight, and it leapt out of my chest and landed just outside of Austin. And the message was, it was not definitive. It was, come to Austin, journey with your people, and listen to the land. The land will tell you whether or not this is your spot for the foreseeable future. So I'm doing that. But also, about 2 weeks later, I got a very strong hit that I'm also supposed to go and visit a little magical mountain town called San Miguel in Mexico. And that may seem confusing, but I am honoring the divine directives and I'm not questioning it anymore. You heard what I said about asking God for help, being on my knees, saying, I need help. And all of the guidance has been so clear. So I'm going to encourage you to turn inward and to stop distracting and to stop watching the television or whatever else, the scrolling, right? The endless scrolling, no more information. What does the wisdom of your soul have to say? When you tune all the way in and you listen from that place of being willing to surrender to divine will and allowing your life to be in the realm of uncertainty and the unknown, that is where all the magic and the miracles reside. That is your soul's purpose. Go bravely, go boldly, and go, my love. Ah, life is so beautiful. And that is little bits of lately. So I hope that this supports you on your journey. If anything, giving you some inspiration to ask for what you need. Trust that the nudges will be there and cultivate the courage to take the action when necessary. Go bravely. Love you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day.